Hey guys, it's Protendo, and if you've watched my videos for a while, you know that one of the most important things to me in any Animal Crossing game is atmosphere. That cozy small town vibe is essential for me to fully immerse myself in these games, and one of the most important elements to set that atmosphere is the music. Animal Crossing's music is iconic for a reason. These games have a way of immediately instilling the player with a sense of serenity using their soundtracks alone. As I've talked about before, New Leaf's OST specifically was almost magical to me. Each hourly track felt expertly composed to wonderfully fit into the natural progression of the day while also representing its specific hour perfectly. I adore Wild World and City Folk soundtrack, and I like GameCube's quite a bit, but New Leaf's just hit different. So you can imagine how much I was looking forward to hearing what the brand new Animal Crossing Switch had to offer. I remember prior to its release, one of the things I was most excited about in New Horizons was the hourly music. I was listening to New Leaf's soundtrack 7 years after its release, still listening to City Folk soundtrack over a decade after its release, still listening to Population Growing's almost 20 years after its release. The music that I was about to receive could very well be music that I listened to for the rest of my life, and that notion was so exciting. But unfortunately, for me personally, New Horizons OST didn't really deliver. A lot of the game's themes are excellent. The music for events and shops are top-notch and sound absolutely amazing. But it's the main music, the hourly music, that ended up falling flat. I have some issues with the instrumentation and the lack of cohesion I feel the OST suffers from, but more than anything, my problem is how unfitting a lot of the music feels. While Wild World and New Leaf soundtracks felt like they were composed while considering the emotion brought on by every hour, New Horizons feels more haphazard. Throughout the hourly music, you'll find night tracks that feel like they belong in the morning tracks that feel like they have too much energy for the time, etc. I can't say I didn't find it disappointing. So today, I thought I'd try my best to take the New Horizons hourly soundtrack and reorganize it in a manner that I think better reflects the flow of the day, at least in my opinion. At the video's end, I'll play you my new and potentially improved soundtrack so you can properly form an opinion. Keep in mind that some of these decisions might sound weird solely because we've been playing New Horizons for so long. After 2 years of growing used to the order of the hourly music, any changes at all might sound strange. I'm only hoping that you look at this like, if the soundtrack had originally come out this way, would I have objected? Not that you aren't allowed to still disagree. With that said, let's get into things. Starting us off, we've got 12 AM, and hey, this is one of the handful of tracks that I actually didn't move. Its slow and sparse nature and captures the feeling of midnight pretty well, at least to the point of not having an evident replacement. Next up, we've got 1 AM. Here we have our first switch, and it's a pretty minor one in the grand scheme of things. The current 1 AM is now 11 PM. As it stands, 1 AM kind of interrupts a nice flow that the late night tracks have with its blues-esque style. I actually like 1 AM quite a bit, but I think it works slightly better as a precursor to the post-midnight tracks instead of being a post-midnight track itself. 2 AM's up next, and this one's barely getting moved at all. The current 2 AM is now 1 AM. I made this decision for a couple reasons. One, I think 12 AM flows pretty nicely into this track without 1 AM stuck between them, and two, Wild World made it a series staple to have 1 AM as the most relaxed, introspective theme in every Animal Crossing game, and I don't think the old 1 AM really lived up to that standard. 2 AM most certainly fits that emotion, however, so I think moving it back an hour is the right choice. Next up is 3 AM, and I really don't like this track, but it's not like it fit anywhere else, so at 3 AM it stays. At least it plays so late that I barely have to hear it. 4 AM is also getting a pretty minor change compared to some of the other tracks I'll be going over later. The current 4 AM is getting moved to 2 AM. I personally feel like with the changes I've made so far, 12 AM, 1 AM, and 2 AM have this really natural progression that mirrors the progression of the night. You got 12 AM setting the tone, the new 1 AM representing the exhausting yet almost beautiful nature of the late night, and the new 2 AM kinda saying, well, if you're going to stay up, we gotta pick up the pace a little bit. That's how I see it at least. 5 AM is often considered to be the most beautiful track in the game, and while I think it works pretty well where it is, it too will receive a minor change. The current 5 AM is being moved back to 4 AM. To me, a 4 AM track in an Animal Crossing game should be the last of the late night, cozy, introspective, and emotional tracks. 5 AM is when the world just barely starts to wake up. The warmth of the sun can start to be felt near the hour's end, and the earliest of early birds are getting out of bed. But 4 AM is the last instance of solitude in the night. While the rest of the world sleeps, you're still awake. And I personally feel like this track represents that feeling beautifully, just as New Leaf's 4 AM did. 6 AM earns a place on the podium next to 12 and 3, as it too is staying the exact same. It captures that feeling of waking up all too well, yet still carries with it a soft but persistent energy that encourages you to get out of bed. There's not much more you could want in a 6 AM track. 7 AM is next, and if you guys have heard any of my complaints on New Horizons OST before, you already knew that this one was going to be moved. I honestly think this is one of the best hourly tracks in the game, but in my opinion, it plays too early. This doesn't feel like a natural follow-up to the calm yet uplifting 6 AM we just heard. The difference in energy is just far too vast, so as such, I'm moving it to 9 AM. It just isn't representative of the level of enthusiasm most people have at 7 AM. Take everything I just said about 7 AM and it applies to 8 AM even more intensely. It's too loud and grating to play at 8 AM. Every past Animal Crossing game nailed the feeling of 8 AM in my opinion, and this could just be because of New Horizons OST being much louder in general, but it feels like it's trying way too hard to be highly energetic, which really doesn't match the hour to me. I'm moving it to 10 AM. At least there, it's a tad bit more fitting. Next up is 9 AM, which I'm moving to 11 AM. To me, this is the vibe of the last bit of morning chillness before the day starts to pick up at noon. The current 11 AM isn't terrible at setting that tone, but it almost feels a little too chill coming off of the 4 energetic tracks that precede it. 10 AM is an excellent morning track in my opinion, and does a pretty good job of setting the proper tone for the hour. However, I think its comparatively relaxed nature to some of the other morning tracks would make it a great 8 AM. It has that get up and go feeling without being overly loud for such an early morning song. It's the type of music that would make playing early much more enjoyable to me. 11 AM is similar to 10 AM in that it's a morning track that feels like it should play earlier in the morning. It has this slowness to it that makes me think the day is just getting started, and because of that, I think it would make a great 7 AM. Not only does it encompass how most people feel at that time, but it leads really nicely into the new 8 AM, which you can hear at the end of the video. 12 PM is pretty much perfect. There's not much more I could want from a noon hourly track in Animal Crossing. It's joyful, energetic, and feels like it's giving you the okay to get some stuff done. Easily one of the most fitting tracks in New Horizons. Now we're getting into the afternoon tracks, and that leads us to 1 PM. This track does a decent job of capturing the feeling of a lazy afternoon, even if it might feel a little jarringly slow after the high energy of 12 PM. Just to get these both out of the way, 1 PM and 2 PM are switching places. I'm only really doing this because I think the current 1 PM leads into 3 PM quite naturally. 2 PM is a garbage track, and I'd be dissatisfied with it being literally anywhere unless I decided to remove the hour of 2 PM entirely, which I considered. Fans of New Horizons soundtrack who think I've already destroyed the game's OST will be happy with this decision. Every track from 3 PM to 7 PM is staying in the exact same place. I've said it before, but this game really nails the evening. From the music to the visuals, this is my absolute favorite time to play New Horizons, and there's nothing about it that I'd like to alter. I mean, can you imagine the outrage if I changed 5 PM? Could very well be the end of my channel. But after that crowd-pleasing choice, I've got to follow it up with something more controversial. 8 PM is easily the least fitting track in New Horizons soundtrack. This song literally gives me the opposite vibes it's supposed to. When I hear this, it makes me think of the sun rising and the cold of night fading away into a brand new day. It does not make me think of us trudging deeper into the night, nor does it provide the relaxing tone one would typically equate to an Animal Crossing night track. It feels completely out of place, and because of that, it's getting the biggest change of this video. 8 PM is now 5 AM. I know that might sound crazy, but when I close my eyes and listen to this track, I can't help but picture that early morning imagery. Next up is 9 PM, and this is a much smaller change. I'm only moving it an hour, making it the new 10 PM. I don't know, I really don't like this track, so I don't have much to say in terms of justification. It's mostly just here so that I can make some other, better changes, but still have a track for every hour. But man, this one is so boring. Ugh. 10 PM is next, and it's the new 8 PM. Not only does it feel like an infinitely better progression of 7 PM than the old 8 PM did, but it also has this vibe of the early night. It keeps things playful, it's not time for self-reflection just yet, and this track feels like it gets that. Not that it even holds a candle to the masterpieces that are City Folk and New Leaf's 8 PM, or the catchy romp that is GameCube's 8 PM. Comparatively, this one's still just okay. maybe even a little bad. And finally, 11 PM. This is the new 9 PM. I do think that 10 PM and this track flow nicely into each other, even if they're exceedingly dull, so in moving 10 PM to 8 PM, I knew that I had to make 11 PM 9 PM. But honestly, making this video just made me reflect on how dull New Horizons' selection of night themes are. Truly a shame. And that's it. New Horizons' soundtrack is now completely reorganized. Well, mostly. A lot of these choices were difficult to make, since after playing the game for a while, a lot of these tracks start to represent their hour in my mind based on memories alone, even if they're not all that fitting. However, I ended up with a result that I like, so I'll shut up now and let you guys listen to a portion of every hourly track in the new order that I created. Please don't judge me too hard. I'll see you guys later. Protendo, out.